Some men love the chase more than the catch. They'll pursue you like you're a prize, the grand finale to their redemption arc. They'll make promises they never plan to keep, talk about forever like they've already earned it, and treat you like the woman who's going to fix what the last one broke. And for a while, you start to believe it because the way they look at you, the way they talk to you, it feels like safety. Finally, right? But what you don't realize at first is that for him, it's not safety, it's validation. You're not just his partner, you're his proof that he can pull someone like you, that he can rise to your level without actually doing the work to meet you there. And when the high of that validation fades, when the relationship stops being his ego boost and starts being a mirror, that's when everything changes. Because when a man who hasn't built himself tries to love a woman who has, he doesn't know how to handle her. He'll study her first, he'll admire her confidence, her sense of self, but then he'll start to resent it because your light doesn't just illuminate the good, it also exposes every corner of himself he's still running from, every insecurity, every unfinished part, every place where he still doesn't feel like he's enough. So instead of growing, he starts shrinking you. He'll make little jokes that sting. He'll question your choices. He'll start treating your independence like rejection, your success like competition, your self-assurance like attitude. And if you're not careful, you'll start believing it. You'll start editing yourself, making yourself smaller and softer and just quieter overall. Not because you want to, but because you're trying to save the version of him he showed you in the beginning. That's what happens when the fairy tale turns into a fight for the light. Because to love a woman who knows her worth, a man has to know his. And the ones who don't, they'll break what they couldn't build just to feel powerful again. So welcome back to Chasing Stability. Today we're talking about what happens when a man meets a woman he's not really ready for. And instead of rising to meet her, he tries to break her down from the inside. Because when you're the woman who knows her worth, your presence exposes everything he's still hiding from or trying to figure out. You don't even have to say a word. Your peace and your confidence, your self-awareness, it all speaks for itself. And to a man who hasn't found his own footing in this world yet, that doesn't feel like admiration. It feels like a threat to his manliness. And not every man responds that way, right? And that's what we're breaking down today. There's a difference between the one who's grounded and the one who's grasping. A man who knows who he is will stand beside you with pride, not fear. He'll admire you, protect your peace, make room for your shine. Actually, more than likely, he'll probably help you grow more shine. But the man who doesn't, he'll call it humbling when it's really just insecurity. He'll disguise control as care. He'll say you're asking for too much because he's not enough in his own eyes yet. It doesn't ever start ugly. It starts like a fairy tale, the kind that feels almost cinematic. Like it can't be real because insecure men often study you before they sabotage you. They mirror your energy. They become exactly what you need just long enough to earn your trust. And then once they feel small standing next to you, they start chipping away at what made you glow to them in the first place. So let's break this down. If we wanted to, for the sake of argument here, there are two types of men that you'll date. The one who feels safe beside you, and then the ones who feel small beside you. And the difference here is like night and day, literally. If he's feeling safe next to you, that man is grounded. He knows exactly who he is and what the hell he's worth. He doesn't need to dim your light or anyone's light for that matter, to feel like he's standing in his own brightness. He doesn't shrink when you shine. He doesn't flinch when you level up. He doesn't get quiet when you walk into a room with all eyes on you. If anything, he stands a little taller because he sees you as a partner, an extension of himself, not a threat. He's not competing with you, he's building with you. This is the man who celebrates you without hesitation, the one who's proud to stand next to you, to introduce you, to claim you, to support you, not because he sees you as like this accessory, but because he sees you as an equal and something to be proud of. He's the man whose masculinity isn't just performative. He doesn't need to be the smartest or the loudest or the most successful to feel worthy. He knows who he is, even when he's not performing for anyone else. But the insecure man, whew, girl, that's a completely different experience entirely. He loves the idea of a confident woman. Sure, everyone does. Until he realizes confidence comes with standards. He loves your independence until it means you don't rely on him to feel whole. He loves your success until it reminds him of everything he never pursued or had enough courage to go after in the first place. He loves your strength until it no longer props up his ego. To an insecure man, your light feels like exposure almost. Like your confidence feels like criticism. Your self worth feels like kind of a rejection in a way. He doesn't see you as a partner. He starts to see you as proof that he's not enough. And instead of dealing with that feeling, he deals with you. He'll pull back, he'll minimize you, he'll compete with you in ways that don't even make sense. He'll make snide comments and like backhanded compliments, passive aggressive jokes, like just little cuts in general designed to bring you down just enough that he can feel level with you again. And the worst part is you start thinking that it's you. Like maybe you're too much. Maybe you're intimidating. Maybe you should soften yourself, shrink yourself, or not be so intense just to make him feel better. But honestly, no, you were never too much. He was just too unfinished in himself. A man who knows his worth admires a powerful woman. A man who doesn't tries to reduce her power so he doesn't feel like he's disappearing behind her. And that right there is the difference. Not between confidence or secure men, but between relationships that build you and relationships that absolutely break you. And that's where I lived the last year in the aftermath of a relationship that left me absolutely devastated, broken, and just really confused. Because here's the truth, I didn't walk into that relationship insecure. I didn't walk in weak. I didn't walk in unsure of who I was. Life had knocked me down, sure, with illness and then the life changes after that, and then all the isolation. All of that softened me. It somewhat quieted me. It made me small in ways I didn't even notice at first. And he met me in that version of myself, the version that stayed home, the version that kept to herself, the version that didn't have the energy to shine too brightly, the version that needed help more than she had the capacity to stand on her own. And in that version, he felt safe and in control. He liked the girl who wasn't being social. He liked the girl who was sick and tired, low key, quiet. He liked the girl who didn't challenge him, didn't take up too much space, didn't disrupt anything, didn't fight for more. He liked the girl who, without even realizing it, made herself smaller so the relationship could feel that much bigger. But something shifted because healing, even when it's slow, still happens. Confidence, even when it's fragile, still returns. Pieces of you, even the ones you lost for a while, eventually come back to the surface. And when mine did, when I started to feel more like me again, That's when everything broke. Once I got stronger, once my health improved, once I started wanting to socialize again, wanting to dress up again, wanting to reconnect with the world again. He didn't know what to do with that version of me, which ironically I reached again because I loved him and he brought that fight back out of me. But the girl that came with that, he didn't recognize. The girl who was hidden suddenly wanted to be seen again. The girl who stayed quiet suddenly had her extremely loud, rambunctious voice back again with all of the opinions. The girl who was surviving suddenly started living again. And instead of celebrating me, he challenged me every step of the way. My confidence became an issue. My social life became a threat. My happiness became too much. My independence became a problem he needed to solve. And the craziest part was, I didn't even come back loud like how I was before I got sick. I came back gradually, like softly and slowly, carefully. But insecure men don't need you to be loud to feel threatened. They just need you to stop shrinking. Because when an insecure man meets you at your lowest, he will cling to that version of you. But the moment you start rising, he panics. Not because you changed, but because you stopped fitting into the version of you that made him feel safe. And that's when admiration turns into intimidation, affection turns into control, and love starts feeling like a punishment for growing. The thing about insecure men is this: they don't lose interest when you grow, they lose that control. In the beginning, he admires you, right? He was so obsessed with you. He put you on a pedestal he quietly planned to chip away at later. You were the dream girl he never thought he could get, until he got you during a season where you were less like yourself and a little more fragile. But admiration only lasts until he realizes you're not staying small, because insecure men don't want a partner. They want a mirror that reflects back the version of themselves they can tolerate. So when you start rising, when your confidence comes back, when your personality resurfaces, when your world starts to expand again and open up into your old reality, you start being his fantasy and start being his fear. And insecure men don't know how to handle fear. They don't know how to say, I don't feel enough. So instead, they do the only thing their ego knows how to do. They try to shrink the woman who makes them feel small. It starts super subtly. Little comments on the side, that like weird side eye, like, okay, whatever. Tone shifts, annoyances that never existed before. He goes from, I love how confident you are, to, why do you need all this attention, real quick. He goes from, I love when you dress up, to, who are you trying to impress when I'm not there, without blinking. He goes from, I love that you're outgoing, to, you're being so much lately, it's a little bit annoying, as soon as you start glowing again. And the craziest part is, you start questioning everything, right? You start thinking maybe you are doing too much. Maybe you should tone it down. Maybe you shouldn't go out, dress nice, laugh loud, or live as boldly as you used to. That's how the power shift happens. Not through force, but through your own doubt. Because the moment an insecure man realizes he can't rise to meet you where you're going, he'll try to pull you back down to meet him where you met. And here's the darkest truth most people don't like to say out loud: the relationships that end the worst often started the best. Not because he loved you deeply, but because he was overcompensating for what he knew he couldn't maintain. And once the fairy tale phase ends, once you stop dimming yourself, once your confidence returns, he panics, he pulls away, or worse, he starts breaking what he could never build. Because insecure men don't see you as a blessing, They see you as a threat to the identity they're trying to protect or trying to run away from, right? One or the other. And instead of growing with you, they punish you for outgrowing them. If you've ever dated a man who didn't know his worth, you already know this pattern by heart. Even if you didn't have the words for it at the time, it always starts beautifully. Insecure men love bomb like it's their full time job. They're attentive, they're invested, they're obsessed, not because they're healthy, but because they're terrified you'll realize they're not enough before they can latch on. He gives you the fairy tale not out of love, but out of fear. But the thing about fear driven love is that it can't stay pretty for long, right? Phase one is idealization. He puts you on a pedestal so high, it almost feels unreal. And you're thinking, wow, he sees me. But really, he sees what he wishes he could be through you. He's borrowing your identity to feel better about his. Phase two, discomfort. Things shift, not dramatically at first, just little cracks. He gets irritated when you're busy. He gets weirdly quiet when you get like a compliment. He accuses you of things that don't even make sense. He starts needing reassurance he never needed before. He's no longer comfortable with the version of you he once adored because now he's realizing he can't keep up. This is where admiration turns into envy, like right before your eyes. Phase three, sabotage. Then comes the breakdown phase, where he chips away at you slowly enough that you question yourself instead of him. He nitpicks your tone, your outfits, your goals, your confidence, your personality, your friends, everything. He'll gaslight you just enough that you start believing the insecurity he feels is somehow your fault. He becomes distant, cold, unpredictable. He withdraws affection, then gives it back in tiny doses, which only makes you cling harder, trying to get back to the man he was in the beginning. But that man never existed. That was a mask. Phase four, punishment. This is the darkest phase. This is where he starts punishing you for the things he once loved. Again, you're too confident. You're too emotional. You're too outspoken. You're too ambitious. You're changing. But the truth is, you didn't change. You just stopped being the small version of yourself he felt safe controlling. And insecure men don't leave gracefully. They leave extremely messily and cruelly and suddenly, and usually with someone new. Not because they moved on, but because they needed a fresh audience who didn't see behind the mask yet. Because men who can't build can only bond with what is unfinished. And when a man like that leaves, he doesn't just walk away. He tries to rewrite the narrative so he doesn't have to face his own reflection. He will break what he could never build just so he doesn't feel broken himself. Men who are insecure or avoidant don't move on fast because they're over you. They move on fast because they can't sit with themselves. When a man doesn't know his worth, he can't tolerate the emotional quiet that comes after a breakup. Silence feels like accountability. Stillness feels like the worst kind of mirror they could ever sit in front of. In the minute that he has to face the possibility that he contributed to the downfall of the relationship, he'll sprint toward the next distraction like it's a lifeline, because insecure men don't process, they perform. They jump into a new relationship not because they've upgraded, but because they need proof that they weren't the problem, proof that they're still desirable, proof that they can be better for someone else without actually doing the work to become better. But here's what women forget in those moments when this is happening in your relationship: performance changes with the new girl, character does not. The sweet moments the quick effort and the I'm so different now routine, right? That's just the onboarding phase. That's the highlight reel. You've been there. That's him trying on a version of himself he wishes he could sustain, but he never will. So listen carefully. He's not better for the new girl. He's who he was with you, he just hasn't shown it yet. And deep down, he knows that. That's why the rebound happened extremely fast. Not to make you jealous, not even to replace you. It's to avoid the one truth he can't outrun. If he slowed down long enough, he'd have to see himself, and he's not ready for that version. Even if the breakup wasn't entirely his fault, he can't look at the parts that were, because acknowledging where he could have been better means admitting he wasn't the man he was pretending to be. And for someone living in victimhood, that's unbearable. So he chooses the easier story. I was never the problem. And the easiest way to prove that story, find someone new, fast. But here's the little twist there. That new relationship won't save him. It won't heal him, and it won't help him grow either, because he didn't learn the lesson. He just changed the audience. So call it whatever you want. I don't care. Avoidant, narcissist, asshole, all of the above, whatever. I think we throw those words around a lot, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to one thing. He never learned how to sit with himself long enough to grow. Like labels aside, patterns don't lie. A man who moves on instantly isn't healed. He's hiding. He's outsourcing his self worth to whoever will give him attention fast enough that he doesn't have to feel the loss of you. He's borrowing validation from the next girl because he never built any inside himself. And that's why the story always repeats itself, because the man who doesn't change the root will relive the same cycle with a different face. And here's the part that might sting possibly a little bit. You were not replaced. You were honestly escaped. There's a difference. You were too reflective, too revealing, too close to the parts of him he didn't want to confront. The new girl isn't an upgrade. She's a buffer. She's a distraction, a way to delay the breakdown that's coming the moment the honeymoon phase wears off. You know this. She doesn't know it yet, but eventually she will, because he'll have to meet himself eventually. He'll have to face the patterns. He'll have to acknowledge the hurt he caused and the hurt he carries. But that won't happen with you watching. It can't. Your presence made him too aware. And insecure men don't rise to awareness, they run from it. So don't envy who he's with now. Don't romanticize his moving on like it was some type of upgrade from you. You're grieving something he never even sat with. You're healing from a relationship he never processed. You're the one breaking the cycle. He's just repeating it. When someone moves on fast or chooses someone else or doesn't show up for you the way they promised, it feels personal. It hits your confidence and your worth and your was I not good enough wound, you know? And listen, I get it more than probably anyone. I've had moments where I was like, God, be so for real right now. How am I supposed to not take this action personally? It feels like a direct hit to your value, like a review of your entire personality, like Yelp, but emotional. But here's the truth. We often forget in those moments someone else's inability to love you well is not a reflection of your worth. And I say that knowing damn well I'm speaking to myself. It's a reflection of their capacity. And I know that's frustrating because sometimes you will slip into those thoughts like maybe she's better for him, or maybe I missed something, or maybe if I had just, but no, just breathe. They're not better, they're just new. And new is easy. New doesn't require accountability yet. When those thoughts creep back in, though, and they will, they always do, just don't stay there too long, okay? You can visit, but just don't unpack there. Don't redecorate. Don't plant like this garden and acknowledge it for truth. Just acknowledge it, feel it, and move the hell on. Because while you're sitting there trying to figure out what you did wrong, God is like, hey, trust in the Lord with your like whole heart and lean not on your own understanding. Just like trust that He's got it. You're not supposed to understand why this guy didn't choose you or choose to stay or choose to level up. You're not supposed to understand why it ended the way that it did. You're not supposed to understand why he didn't fight for you when you thought this was the guy that was going to fight for you. Because sometimes the closure is simply this: God saw something, you didn't. And I know that hurts so much, but look at what else God promises you, okay? In Exodus 14, he says, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Like, do you not find that so freeing? Like, you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to compete. You don't have to wonder what she has that you don't. You don't need to chase any type of clarity around this guy, because clarity is God's job. And when the heartbreak hits deeper than you expect, when you're curled up wondering why none of it makes any sense anymore after he left, just trust that God is going to bind your wounds. He promises that to the brokenhearted. He heals them, all of your wounds. He sits with you in the pain, your embarrassment, to admit you feel like this way about a guy, baby, you shouldn't. So every time you start spiraling into those "it must be me" thoughts, just remind yourself you're viewing something emotional through human eyes. God is handling it through like eternal ones, where he's like lifted out, like looking down over a stadium. What you lost isn't punishment, it's protection. And you're not being rejected, you are being comforted and redirected. Outgrowing someone doesn't always feel empowering at first. Sometimes, it feels like confusion. Sometimes it feels like you're losing something that meant everything to you. But if you look back, even just like a little bit back, I think you'll probably notice something: that the version of you that begged for effort, maybe settled for half love, waited for the text messages, justified their bare minimum energy, she doesn't exist anymore. You've outgrown the version of you that needed that type of validation from him. You've outgrown the dynamic that made you question what you deserve. You've outgrown the habit of loving people for their potential instead of their patterns. And I feel like this is the most freeing part, right? Outgrowing him doesn't mean he was never important to you. It just means he isn't aligned with where you're going. God doesn't remove people because they're bad, not necessarily. I mean, sometimes maybe, but he also removes people because they're not equipped to go where you're headed. He saw the prayer you whispered when you thought no one was listening. He saw the way you tried, the way you loved, the way you kept hoping they'd rise to meet your expectation. But eventually, he also saw the mismatch and the misalignment and the misdirection, and possibly all of the horrible things on the side that he was doing behind your back. And instead of letting you shrink yourself to fit someone's comfort zone, he trimmed the path so you could grow. So maybe the breakup wasn't a collapse. Maybe it was a release. Maybe it was the moment heaven said, she is 100% ready for more now. And with that, that's where I'm going to end it today, because I want you to sit with that truth for just like a couple seconds here. You didn't get left, you got lifted. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today, and for listening, and for nodding along, hopefully, for letting me say the things we both know sometimes hit a little too close to home. If this episode felt like a wake up call or a hug or a reality check that you needed, share it with someone else who's maybe in their own relationship spiral, or post it to your story, send it to a friend, share it with all of your people who keep trying to ignore all the red flags. Let's help each other stop settling for what's convenient and start choosing what's aligned. Make sure you're following Chasing Stability wherever you're listening to this podcast right now, and also on social media on Instagram and TikTok. Go leave a comment, share your thoughts and your stories on today's episode. I would love to hear them and interact with you all. I love you all so much, and I appreciate all of you being here. This is Chasing Stability, and I'll meet you in the in between next Tuesday.